Alistair Bell, let's have your question, please. Alistair Bell.
8 Catalan ministers have been jailed. Does the panel agree that Spain is behaving like a fascist state?
Wow. Catalonia. Eight of the Catalan devolution ministers were jailed today. Is Spain behaving like a fascist state? Owen Jones.
Well, certainly as a very authoritarian, anti-democratic state, to say the least. Look, it doesn't matter whether you support Catalan independence. It really is actually quite irrelevant. The issue is, do you support the right of the Catalan people to freely determine their own future without being dragged from polling stations and thrown downstairs? And in modern Europe, to see an elected Catalan, an elected political leadership, fleeing a country to claim political asylum and being locked up in prisons should chill every single European and encourage us to stand in solidarity with the Catalan people. Look, I think this is a bit like the right to divorce. Just because you support the right to divorce doesn't mean you think everybody should get divorced. But imagine you've got a married couple and one of them said, you know what, I'm having second thoughts about this. Not sure it's working out. I'm thinking about a divorce. And the response of the partner was, how dare you, screaming in their face, vetoing any talk of a divorce and making their life increasingly hellish. In a sense, the right to national self-determination is similar. I don't happen to support Catalan independence myself, but I do think they have a basic democratic right to determine whether an independent state or not. If Scotland had been denied the right to determine its own future, that would have been a democratic outrage. And in modern Europe today, the least that the other European governments can do is tell the Spanish government, stop assaulting voters, stop locking up elected politicians, stop denying the right of your people to determine their own future, and stop attacking civil liberties. And whatever you think about independence, that should be something that unites all of us, I think.
Daniel Hannan.
I feel so lucky that I live in a country where this kind of thing is unthinkable. And just imagine if something similar had been the response when the issue of Scottish independence was put. Just imagine if David Cameron had responded to Alex Salmond not by sitting down and discussing the terms of the question and the franchise and all, but by having him arrested, you know. Imagine that police had been sent in to break up the poll. Or even, before you get there, imagine London politicians saying we need to anglicise Scotland in the way that a PP former minister in Madrid was saying we need to españolizar a los catalanes. Right? It's an almost unthinkable situation. I'm very, very pleased that we live in a country where we're bound together by shared values, but where it's clearly understood that it's a democracy and that you're free to leave. And do you know what? When you're free to leave, you're in no hurry to exercise that right. If we saw people coming in and locking the doors around us in this studio, our first instinct would be to get up and try and get out, wouldn't it? And that's, in a sense, the position
You're
that
locked
Madrid...
in, actually. You can't get out until the end of
I'm off right
the
now.
hour's up.
But I say this as someone, you know, I'm deeply Hispanophile, and most of my Spanish friends and colleagues are, you know, conservatives and are unionists. But for the last 3 years, I've watched with increasing bewilderment as they've created a problem that previously wasn't there. If there had been a referendum 3 or 4 years ago, all the indications are that it would have gone in favour of the status quo.
Isn't there danger? Isn't there a reality that it's against the Spanish Constitution to have a referendum?
So, change the Constitution, or at least provide a mechanism where constitutional change is possible. I mean, the compromise here is so obvious and is supported in all the polls. You can give Catalonia more autonomy within a continuing union. Vast majority of Catalans say that that's their preferred option. Most Castilian Spanish people say that that would be the acceptable way out of the crisis. It's just extraordinary that this pig-headedness, this stubbornness on both sides, I have to say, has made that kind of outcome so difficult.
You say in the white shirt there.
You say all this, but you support a government that still backs Spain's position. So are you going to lobby the government to change their position on the Spanish stance at the moment?
Well, there's one thing is what should be the position of recognising an independent Catalonia. I think it would be wrong for other governments to start interfering in the internal affairs of a friendly country.
Dan, just quickly, it's a lot worse than that. Look, we had scenes of voters dragged from polling station and thrown downstairs, firefighters being attacked by the Spanish police. It's not just, we're not saying they should recognise Catalan independence. We're saying, or I think some people in the audience probably think this, that they should condemn attacks on human rights and the democratic rights of the Catalan people.
I'm very happy
It's a
to do
simple
that.
You make a point. Let him answer.
I've had this conversation. I've said privately what I'll happily say now publicly to my Spanish Conservative friends. I think this is not only a morally wrong behaviour, it is also intellectually wrong. It's foolish because they are making much more likely the outcome that they supposedly
I think the point
object
is
to.
whether you make the point to your British Conservatives, not the Spanish Conservatives.
Well, but what do we... I mean, the government... The only thing practically that the government could do would be to take a different position on whether Catalonia should become independent. No, I don't think it should do that. I think it should be neutral on that.
Why didn't they just condemn the attacks on democracy? It's very straightforward.
Well, but I think they have said that there was excess force.
They haven't condemned the Spanish government for a thing they've done, not a single thing.
All right, Jean.
Nothing.
Owen is absolutely right. And, you know, I appreciate what you say about the country that we live in and the way in which the proposition for a referendum in Scotland was negotiated. And I give credit to both the UK and the Scottish Government for doing that. But we cannot appreciate that and yet turn our faces away from a situation in Spain where that is not the case. And our government does have an obligation, as a friend of Spain, to say, you really do need to uphold, excuse me, democratic rights and allow people to determine the road that they want to go down. And to make it worse, day by day, I am almost speechless when I see the next step that the Spanish government takes. And now to jail elected politicians, not sacked politicians, elected politicians, to put them in jail and to believe that that is a way to resolve a difference seems to be utter madness. That, frankly, is a way in which those differences will increase
You've got
entrenched.
You've got members of your party who've signed a motion saying that Scotland should recognise Catalonia and its independence. SNP wants independence from the UK. Do you support them? Do you think the SNP should take up a position of saying we're in favour of an independent Catalonia?
I understand why members of my own party have signed that motion, but you know, perhaps they don't know that as a Scottish Government we don't have the powers to recognise anything internationally. What we can do and are doing is urging the Spanish Government to uphold human rights and democracy and hoping that the UK government and the union that we are still part of will do exactly the same, because that is the right thing to do, regardless of your view on independence, human rights and democracy.
The woman on the left there, yes, on the gangway, yes.
Every country in Europe should be condemning Spain. The way the Guardia went in, it was an absolute disgrace. We've had a house there for 26 years, and people that we know were pulled out of the polling station and not allowed to vote. It's a disgrace.
Amen.
And you sit at the very back there on the left.
While I agree with Owen, and the scenes that we've seen, totally unacceptable, and while probably at some point Catalonia will get the opportunity to vote for that, it was an illegal vote. And when that vote does come along, which it probably will, and if it is a no, as in where the polls are suggesting at the moment, will the Catalan nationalists accept that no? Unlike the Scottish nationalists don't accept the no at the moment.
Okay. And you, sir, there. The man behind you, the man in the pink shirt there, yes.
As you and the other gentleman said, that the Catalan independence referendum was unconstitutional and illegal. The actions taken by the Spanish government were completely reprehensible. All they needed to do was say that since this wasn't a part of the constitution, the vote was void, and there would have been far less trauma and lashback from this than the actions they did take.
Anne McElroy.
I think it's, it is right, but also a bit too easy to simply go down the line of condemnation. We can all condemn what we saw happen because we wouldn't want to see it in our own countries. And having cut my teeth cutting the old East Germany and covering authoritarian regimes in Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union, it has resonances which I think are deeply unpleasant. But the facts are that there is not an overall appetite in Catalonia for independence. And sometimes the debate is conducted as if there were. And sometimes some of the framing of news reporting seems to suggest that there is. And there is not. This referendum was not held in a way that was appropriate. The road to it was not the one that would have been taken in the sense of, we talked earlier about, or referred to, the Scottish referendum. It is a sign of what happens if you go down roads which are secessionary rather than pro-independence. If you want a legitimate pro-independence movement, then go out there, campaign for it, get people on your side. That, I think, would have shown up Madrid and the unbending stance, overly so, of Mr. Rajoy, the Prime Minister, so much more than this slightly fly-by-night movement, which I don't think has covered itself in glory. Now is the time for both sides to step back. The push for independence is, I think, over for the moment. There will be a chance in elections in December, I think, to begin to redraw the relationship. Personally, I'm for greater autonomy along the Basque model, but I think the way to do it is not this. We've seen a hot-headed conflict, and it's had very bad results.
Okay.
To be fair, I think they did try. I mean, I happened to be in Barcelona talking to what they call their foreign minister the day before they announced the referendum. And he talked me through the ways in which he tried to negotiate with Madrid to get something that may have been on a vote on something short of full independence. And there was a kind of aggressive authoritarian legalism from Madrid, an absolute refusal to discuss it, which I think was hugely unproductive.
Just on that question
Hold on,
about-
no, wait a second. Kezia Dugdale hasn't a chance. Kezia.
Well, I think Prime Minister Rajoy has done more to build the support for independence than any Catalonian nationalist has done for quite some time by the way that they have behaved. And I think what we've got now are two fundamental principles clashing, the rule of law and democracy. So you've got the government in Madrid saying this referendum is unconstitutional, we've got to abide by the constitution, and you've got people in Catalonia saying we've just had this referendum, the people have spoken, that must be respected. And this disaster, this complete mess has all come around because that referendum didn't have the legitimacy that it should have had when the government in Catalonia had a majority to conduct that referendum. The only way that we can get over this impasse, in my view now, is to have a legitimate referendum in Catalonia. There has to be a political, democratic solution to this, and it has to be that referendum that everybody will take part in, everybody will vote in, and then everybody should ultimately respect the result of that referendum.
Okay. We're over.